Okay, so we are continuing in siman lamed, and we have now the issue of somebody who needs to put on tefillin earlier than the zman. We said that the zman is mishayakir, which is not so clear exactly what that is, but it's sometime a little bit after alot hashachar, when there's enough light that you can recognize somebody from a close distance, somebody again that you're not too familiar with, but you do know of. And the question is, what if somebody needs to put on tefillin earlier than that? So the Gemara says as follows on this. So the Gemara says in Masechet Menachot Daf Lamed Vav Amud Aleph, Tanu Rabanan tefillin me'imachai mevarech alehen mishat hanachatan, כיצד היה משכים לצאת לדרך ומתיירא שמא יאבדו מניחן, וכשיגיע זמנן למשמש בהן ומברך עליהן. So the Gemara says, brings an example of somebody who is leaving home early to go to the road, and he's afraid that something will happen to the tefillin, so he wants to put them on already before he leaves. So the Gemara says, Menichan, וכשיגיע זמנן למשמש בהן ומברך עליהן. When the time of זמן הנחת תפילין comes, then he is memashmesh ben. In other words, he touches them a bit, fiddles with them a bit, and then he says the bracha. And Rashi here explains memashmesh behu dehavi keilu menichan, by touching them. That's as if you're putting them on, and that's what enables you to say the bracha. Now Tosfot here says that this also applies to the talit, that you can put on the talit also earlier. And again, when the zman comes, you do the mishmush in your mevarech. He says, "Afal pi shesh lechalek ben tefillin letzitzit mishmush mitzvah kedei lekaman ein nira lechalek." You could have made the distinction between tefillin and tzitzit as follows: that by tefillin we know chayav adam lemashmesh ben kol shah. So there is this halacha that there's a mitzvah to be memashmesh but tefillin. We don't find that by tzitzit. But he says no, it doesn't make a difference. Both by tzitzit you can do the mishmush and the bracha. And here I saw in the Chidush Arashba, which I think also explains what Tosfot means. He says, "והמשמוש אינו הנחה גמורה שיברך להניח על המשמוש, אלא שאם היה מברך עליהם ולא משמוש, איך יברך להניח? וכבר הם מנחים בראשו, ואינו עשו מעשה שדומה להנחה, אבל המשמש בהם ונזכר מהמצווה שנצטווה להניחם, וממשמש לכך בהם, הרי כאילו מניחם ומברך עליהם להניחם, כאילו היה מניחם." In other words, what the Rashba says, it's not really that the mishmush is like hanacha. We don't make a bracha generally on mishmush. But here the idea is that you're already wearing the tefillin. So because you're already wearing the tefillin, so you can say the bracha, right? Because you're still continuing to fulfill the mitzvah every moment that the tefillin are on you. But the lashon la'aniach tefillin is sort of inappropriate. So by touching the tefillin, and now you're reminded of the mitzvah that we have the mitzvah to la'aniach tefillin. That's what sort of justifies saying the bracha. Okay, so the same thing can apply also to tzitzit as well. By touching them, you're reminding yourself of the mitzvah litatef b'tzitzit, and that's what justifies saying the bracha litatef b'tzitzit, even though it's already on you. And again, it's not a problem in terms of the mitzvah, because the mitzvah is a continuous mitzvah, which is fulfilled every moment that the tefillin or tzitzit are on you. Now, here the Tur brings an interesting shita on this. The Tur says, ואם צריך ללך לדרך, יכול להניחן קודם זמנן בלא ברכה, you can put them on before the time without a ברכה, ולכשיגיע זמנן ימשמש בהן ויברך. והרב רבינו פרץ כתב, כיוון דקיימה דלילה זמן תפילינו, אלא שאין להניחן בלילה משום גזירה שמא יישן בהם, מי שרוצה לצאת לדרך יכול להניחן קודם זמנם ולברך עליהם מיד. ואדוני אבי הראש והלא כתב כן. So he quotes here the Rabbeinu Peretz that says that even though the Gemara said you should only make the bracha when the time comes, that's according to the opinion that Laila loves man tefillin. But we rule Laila zman tefillin, that midin mikar, then you could put on tefillin at night, and the only reason we don't is because of a gzerah that you'll come asleep with them. So here, obviously, you're waking up early in the morning to leave, so there's no concern that you're going to fall asleep. So here, Rabbeinu Peretz says, therefore, in this case, you can even make the bracha at night. Okay, but he says, Adoni Avi Arosh v'lo katav, in other words, according to the Rosh, even though we do allow you to put on the tefillin, nevertheless, Chazal did not allow you to make the bracha until day. even if Laila Zman Tfilin. The Beit Yosef here claims that the Rambam omitted this entire Gemara about putting it on earlier, and he says that that could be that the Rambam held, since the Rambam rules that Laila loves Zman Tfilin, that night is not the time for Tfilin, the Rambam did not rule like this Braita and said that you cannot put on the Tfilin earlier. So basically, it comes out here, according to Beit Yosef, we have three opinions. One opinion of the Rosh, it simply follows the Gemara. You can put on the Tfilin earlier, but only make the bracha when the Zman comes. Rabbeinu Peretz says you can even make the bracha at night, because we rule Laila Zman Tfilin. And the third opinion of the Rambam, who says you cannot put it all before the Zman, because he rules Laila Lav Zman Tfilin. Shulam Ravzot, how are you?
Orach Hashem, good morning. I'm so sorry for being late. I apologize.
No problem. We just got to the Shulchan Aruch on Sif Gimel.
Very nice.
So here the Mechaber rules as follows. If somebody wants to leave early, before the Zman and the Chat Tfilin, Manicham, כשיגיע זמנן ימשמש בהן ויברך. So you're allowed to put them on. The Mechaber rules like Dina de Gemara, that you're allowed to put them on before the Zman, and when the Zman of the Chat Tfilin comes, Mishayakir, then you mashmesh them, you touch them a little bit, and then you can say the bracha l'aniach tfilin. Deleika lemecha shema yishan behem, kivan sheishkim yatsa l'derech. And again, the reason we allow you to put it on, even though it's still night, is because the Mechaber again is following the Rishonim that ruled Laila Zman Tfilin, and it's only a Gzerah de Rabbanan shema yishan behem that we don't put on tfilin at night. So here that you've woken up early to leave, we're not concerned that you'll fall asleep with them. So that's why in this case, we allow you to put them on at night, even though normally that is not allowed. Now, here, the Mishnah Berurah says, in other words, since we rule Laila Zman Tfilin, so when you put them on, even though you're not yet saying the bracha, you can have in mind to do it l'shem mitzvah. And he says, even though you could have maybe had somewhere secure to place it until the Zman comes, nevertheless, it is permitted to put them on, because again, we're not concerned that you'll sleep with them in this case, where you woke up early in the morning to leave. Okay, but he says that's only regarding putting on tefillin. Regarding the bracha, Chachamim did not allow you to say the bracha at night. However, he says that if by mistake you did say the bracha, then b'diavad we rely on the sheet of Rabbeinu Peretz that says that since we hold Laila Zman Tfilin, so you can even say the bracha at night. So therefore, if somebody by mistake he put on the tefillin and he already said the bracha, even though it wasn't yet Zman and Nachat Tfilin, so b'diavad he is yotzei in the bracha and he does not have to make a new bracha later on. Here he says, the Mishnah Berurah, he says, this is only dafka olech b'raglav orokev, אבל יושב בעגלה אסור להניח שמא יישן בהם. You should not wear them if you're riding in a carriage, because then you might fall asleep in them. Although in the Be'ur Halacha he says that there are achronim that are lenient on this. So again, this theoretically could apply as well to a car or a train or something of the sort, that you would be able to put on tefillin early. Now, I brought here in the source pages a few tshuvot of the Igrot Moshe was asked about this. So first of all, I'll just try to summarize the issue briefly. Sometimes you have places, I'm sure you're familiar with this, that the timing of Bishiyakir can be quite late, and people want to start the tefillah earlier. So the best way to do that is you start the tefillah, you try to calculate it so that you'll reach after Yishtabach to the Zman of Bishiyakir. So then you can put on the Talit and Tfilin then, after Yishtabach, and make the bracha then, or alternatively, if you put them on earlier, then when you get to after Yishtabach, then you say the brachot in between Yishtabach and Yotzero, then you can do Mishmush and say the brachot on the Talit and Tfilin. Now regarding somebody, another two tshuvot of Rav Moshe, regarding somebody who is not able at all to wear the tefillin after the Zman Mishiyakir. In other words, he has to start working, and he's really unable to wear the tefillin at all after the Zman Mishiakir. So then where Moshe permitted him to put it on earlier and even say the bracha, to rely on the Rabbeinu Peretz. He says, B'shat Chak, we can rely on Rabbeinu Peretz, that Laila Zman Tefillin, and you can even say the bracha at night. So that's for somebody who doesn't have other parnasa, and he's unable to wear the tefillin after the Zman, so then he can rely on the Rabbeinu Peretz and put it on earlier and even say the bracha. Again, Rav Moshe does not like the idea of somebody wearing tefillin completely without a bracha, because he'll say then people will start getting used to not saying a bracha tefillin. So therefore, in that case of Shat Chak, he permits one even lechatchila to say a bracha on tefillin, even though it's still before the Zman.
Could the same also be said about like someone going to school, like in the winter here in Europe, where this month feeding is like 7:30ish, 7:40, and the school starts already at 7:30, and they won't get home until it's basically dark again?
Look, again,
it's not Panasa.
Yeah, it's not Parnasa. I mean, it's best to try to find some sort of arrangement, with the school, if possible. I don't know if it's the same thing as, again, Rav Moshe was speaking about, tzorech Parnasa. Let me show you the tshuva. You have that situation, really? That Zman feeding is not even at 7:30?
Yes.
Wow. So what do people do?
Those basically, it really depends. I mean, some people are able to manage somewhat to put in like a break or something, but some don't.
Right. That's best. If look, again, you have to use your, if you see it's a type of person that otherwise he's not going to put on tefillin, so then you can, you understand what I mean? In other words, some people, they're either they put it on before or they're not going to put it on at all. So for those kind of people, even though if he was a bit frommer, it wouldn't have been Bishat Chak, he would have made arrangement. I think for that cases, you can also tell them to put it on before. But somebody who is a bit stronger, so then either make some sort of arrangement with the school, either to come later or to some sort of time during the day, like a break, that they would be able to put on the tefillin and say it properly. He says here, he says like this, והנוס ודאי יש להחשיבו, אין לחייבו להפסידו עבודתו, שהוא הפסד יותר מחומש בשביל מצוות עשה. וכל שכן במדינה זו שאי אפשר להשיג עבודה אחרת, כי הכל הוא בידם ולא ייתנו לו. Okay, you can see, I'm not sure, he was writing this in the year of 1932. Okay, so I don't think the situation is still like this in America, but he's saying, if you're going to lose your job, that's if said yoter michomesh, you're not required to do that for a mitzvah taseh. And he says, certainly in this country where it's not possible to find another job. So that's the case where he allowed it. Okay. Any other questions or comments on that point? Okay, very good. Let's continue. The next seif here in the tour is, let's switch to the tour, is as follows. היה בא בדרך ותפילין בראשו ושקע עליו חמה, יניח ידו עליהן עד שיגיע לביתו. In other words, he was coming in the derech, and before he was able to reach home, the sun set. So he should place his hand on the tefillin until he reaches home. ואם יש בית קרוב לחומה שמשתמרים שם, חולצן ומניחן שם. And if there is a house close to the wall of the city that you can put the tefillin there security, then you take them off and place them there. היה יושב בבית המדרש ותפילין בראשו וקידש עליו היום, מניח ידו עליהם עד שמגיע לביתו. If he's sitting in the בית המדרש and he has tefillin on his head and קידש עליו היום, also he puts his hand on the tefillin until he reaches home. Okay, so this is all a quote from a Gemara in Masechet Beitzah. The question is, what is this talking about? Is it talking about Yom Chol, or is it talking about on Erev Shabbat? So here in the Reisha, it just says Shaka'al Avchama. So it seems like it's talking about Yom Chol. However, in the seif of the case where he's sitting in the Beit HaMidrash, it says Kidesh Alav Hayom, which sounds like it's talking about Shabbat. So there's a Machloket Rashi also here. According to Rashi, the whole Gemara is talking about on Shabbat, and that's the whole problem, that you need to get it home, but because it's Shabbat, you can't carry it. There's no eruv, let's say, so you're not able to carry the tefillin. So therefore, you have to wear the tefillin until you reach a place where you can secure them. But because Shabbat is lazim and zman tefillin, you have to cover the tefillin with your hand to show, that you're not wearing it like you normally do, because again, it's not really the appropriate time to wear tefillin, so you should sort of try to conceal it. According to Tosfot, the first braita is actually talking about Yom Chol, a weekday, and so why don't you just carry it with your hands? So Tosfot says it's apparently in a way that you're afraid that if you carry it in your hands, it will fall. So therefore, you're allowed to keep on wearing them until you reach the place. So why do I need to cover it with my hand? The reason I need to cover it with my hand is because Laila labs man tefillin, because it's not an appropriate time. So from that Tosfot, it's mashma that according to the opinion that Laila's man tefillin, if you're in such a situation that you still have the tefillin on and you need to get somewhere and you can't carry them, then you don't even need to cover them. The Beit Yosef here says, it's not so clear if the Torah was talking about Yom Chol or Shabbat. So he says if the Torah was talking about Yom Chol, even though he rules Laila's man tefillin, he says nevertheless you should still cover it with your hand so that people won't mistakenly think that it's okay to put on tefillin at night. Anyway, so the Mishnah Berurah, we'll see, he explains the Shulchan Aruch in accordance with this understanding of Tosfot. So let's see the Shulchan Aruch. He says, היה בא בדרך ותפילין בראשו ושקע עליו חמה, או שהיה יושב בבית המדרש ותפילין בראשו וקידש עליו היום, יניח ידו עליהם עד שיגיע לבית, אם יש בית קרוב לחומה שמשתרים שם, חולצם ומניחם שם. So he says again, the first part is talking about Yom Chol, the second part is talking about Kidesh Alav Hayom. Either way, the situation is where for some reason I can't carry it, either because it's Shabbat or because I'm afraid that it will fall. So therefore, either because it's night or because it's Shabbat, I should cover the tefillin with my hand until I reach a place where I can remove them and securely place them. Okay. Let's see seif now. Seif, the Mechaber says, ויש מי שאומר שאם יתפלל תפילת ערבית מבעוד יום, עד שלא הניח תפילין, אין לו להניחם אחר כך. Okay, this was also quite common, still common probably nowadays in the summer, in the many countries, that they would pray tfilat arvit after Plag HaMincha, before Shkia. And according to Beni Rishonim, once the community prays arvit after Plag HaMincha, then it's already considered Laila. We see that regarding many halachot, the Rishonim say it, for example, so also regarding Shabbat, that it's considered that the community has been Mekabel Shabbat. Even by a get, we say lechatchila, because again, it's not so clear that we can't do it at night, but lechatchila, we don't do gitin at night. So even there it says not to do it after the kahal has prayed arvit. So too here he says after the kahal has prayed arvit, not to put on tefillin. However, the poskim say not like that. They say that if somebody hasn't yet put on tefillin, he says here, the Mishnah Berurah says, "Achronim iskimu la'alacha demechuyav la'anichanu bli bracha." In other words, since it's still daytime, ikar hadin, and if you haven't yet put on tefillin yet, then you should put on tefillin even after you've prayed arvit. ואם הוא לא יתפלל עדיין, אף על פי שהציבור יתפללו, אין בכך כלום ויניחם בברכה. And if you haven't yet prayed arvit, it's just a tzibur that is prayed, certainly you should still put on tefillin, even with a bracha im adayin yom. And he says also, it's not so clear why this should apply to tefillin, this whole thing, because if we would say Laila lavs man tefillin, okay, then maybe you can make the argument once after Plag HaMincha, and if daven arvit, maybe it's like Laila. But if you say that really Laila's man tefillin, and the whole reason is Zera Shema Yishan Behem, so who says that you'll go to sleep just because the kahal has prayed arvit? Who says that now you'll go to sleep? So it's a bit of a far-fetched chashash. So therefore, although lechatchila, you should put on the tefillin before, if for some reason somebody was unable to put on tefillin earlier, as long as it's still daytime, even if the kahal has davened arvit, then he should put on tefillin with a bracha. And even if he himself has already prayed arvit, he should also put on tefillin, although in that case, without a bracha. But if you have put on tefillin earlier, then you should not put on tefillin after they've prayed arvit. Okay. Let's see very quickly also siman lamed aleph. It's a brief siman. So it says, בשבת ויום טוב אסור להניח תפילין, מפני שהם עצמם אות, ואם מניחים בהם אות אחר, היה זלזול לאות שלהם. So we know this, everybody agrees that Shabbat and Yom Tov love zman tefillin, so that's why we do not put on tefillin on Shabbat and Yom Tov. Now, there's a machloket rishonim, is there an issur to put on tefillin on Shabbat and Yom Tov? In other words, when we say it's lav zman tefillin, it doesn't mean that I don't have to put on tefillin, but if I want to, I can. Or maybe there's even a prohibition. So the Mechaber here rules that you should not put on tefillin on Shabbat and Yom Tov, because he says, since the reason why we say Shabbat and Yom Tov, they are already considered an ot, and that's why we don't need the ot of the tefillin. So if you would now put on the tefillin, that would be zilzul in the ot of Shabbat and Yom Tov. However, the Mishnah Berurah here says that if you put on the tefillin lo l'shem mitzvah, you're putting on tefillin for another reason, lo l'shem mitzvah, then it's not a zilzul. So, and we rely on that in a case like, for example, where somebody finds tefillin, let's say out in the field, and he doesn't want to leave them there, obviously, you should not leave them there. Then in that case, you are allowed to put on the tefillin. Again, you can't carry the tefillin because there's no eruv. So in that case, you are putting on the tefillin. Again, you're not putting on the tefillin l'shem mitzvah. You're just putting on the tefillin to wear them so that you'll be able to bring them into a secure place. So in that case, it is permitted to wear tefillin on Shabbat and Yom Tov, and it's not considered the zilzul, again, because you're not doing it l'shem mitzvah. You're just doing it to protect the tefillin. Now, in general, he mentions here, what is the status of tefillin and Shabbat and Yom Tov? Are they muktzeh? So he says they are considered a klisha melachto l'isur. So therefore, we can move them letzorach gufan or letzorach mekoman. I don't really see a case of letzorach gufan of the tefillin, but letzorach mekoman, sometimes the tefillin are, you left them in a spot, they're sitting on something, or you left them in a spot and you need that place, you need to move them somewhere else. So that certainly is permitted to move the tefillin, letzorach mekoman. And he says even if it's what we call mechamal atzel, for their sake, also he says b'mkom adchak yesh lakel, you're allowed even to be metatel them, from a place you think that they're not so protected to a place that they'll be more protected. So I think there's sometimes people mistaken on this. They think that tefillin are completely muktzeh and there's no way to move them. In most cases, when there's a need, it is permitted to move the tefillin. Okay, let's see quickly the last halacha. This is very famous machloket. בכל המועד גם כן אסור להניח תפילין מהטעם הזה בעצמו שימי יכול המועד גם הם אות. Okay, this is a מחלוקת ראשונים, the Tur brings it. But it's also we're not clear on whether חול המועד is זמן תפילין or not. The reason is, the safek is, do we say that only Shabbat and Yom Tov are considered an ot because they have isur melacha, or does Chol HaMoed also considered an ot because, like, for example, on Pesach, we don't eat chametz, on Sukkot, we sit in the sukkah, so maybe that's also considered an ot. So they said, menichin oto belo bracha. Adoni Avi Arosh zal haya menichan u'mevarech aleim. The Rosh would put them on and with a bracha. Very famously here, the Beit Yosef says that the minhag nowadays in Sfarad, even though maybe in the times of the Rosh it was to put on with a bracha, nowadays the minhag is not to, and that is because of the Zohar, that the Zohar says that you should not put on tefillin on Chol HaMoed. And that's what he says here in the Shulchan Aruch, that asur להניח tefillin on Chol HaMoed. However, the Rama says, אגב, ויש אומרים שחול המועד חייב בתפילין, וכן נוהגים בכל גלילות אלו להניחם במועד ולברך עליהם, אלא שאין מברכים עליהם בקול רם בבית הכנסת, כמו בשאר ימות השנה. So he says the minhag is to put them on Chol HaMoed and to say the bracha, but not to say the bracha out loud. Here the Mishnah Berurah says actually better to put them on without a bracha because of the safek whether they're chayav b'tefillin or not, and also that when you put them on, you should say, if I'm chayav, then I'm doing it l'shem mitzvah. If I'm not doing it, I'm not doing it l'shem mitzvah. And he says that way you're good according to both opinions. He also says not to put on tefillin de Rabbeinu Tam on Chol HaMoed, and also not to have in a Beit Knesset some putting on yes tefillin and some not. You should have a uniform custom for the Beit Knesset. Although at least when I remember in Israel, nobody puts on tefillin, at least not in the Beit Knesset. Even I think some people who do put on tefillin, they would do it at home. When I was growing up in America, I think some people would put it on, some people didn't. I don't think it was quite like the Mishnah Berurah says that you need a uniform custom.
You have in the call two people who are putting it on with bracha.
What?
You have two people on the call today who are putting
Yeah.
it on bracha.
No, I can imagine. You're following the
Minhag
classical Ashkenazi.
Actually, I don't say a bracha.
Ooh.
I follow Rav Hirsch on that.
Ah,
But Rav Hirsch says not to say a bracha.
you're not a yeke. You're not a yeke. I follow the Chassam Sofer on this.
Uh-huh. Okay, very good. But everybody, I assume, in the Beit Knesset puts on tefillin. So even
Yes.
according to the Mishnah Berurah, even if you have let's say, a visitor from Israel or a Sephardi, who knows what, that doesn't normally put on tefillin in the Beit Knesset, he should put on tefillin again, so that you won't have, lo yishaneh adam mipnei hamachloket.
Yeah, it's
And
it's
also,
very hard.
like invited to also.
I'm sorry?
Also, the issue of Leute is going to do, not to make
exactly.
different groups.
Right.
But it's unfortunate. Very often, it's very, very hard to convince Israeli visitors and Sephardim.
No, it's impossible. I wouldn't try. They think it's like a yeah. But they're probably in shock when they see somebody put on tefillin on Chol Hamoed. They probably never heard of it. But yeah, I wouldn't try too hard. But if somebody asks you what the halacha is, then the correct is, like he says, lo leshanot mipnei lo titkodedu. All right, very good. Okay, all right. Shkoyach to everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Relative.
Relative.